I know nobody expects the Jags to win this weekend against Detroit, but can they at least put their best foot forward early and often? We'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. And you can find us everywhere you get your podcast, whether you watch it on YouTube or listen wherever you listen or hear podcasts each and every day. Glad to have you along here today. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to go over. I got to let you know that today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. You can start with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, everydayers. Welcome to the show. Here's what we're going to go over. Is this the backbreaker game? Is this the one? Is this the one where Shad says he can't take it anymore? I think it depends on how bad it looks, and I think it has a chance to get really, really ugly. Right in the middle of the show, we'll take a look back to the draft from last year, since everybody wants to talk bad about Trent, and Trent doesn't go back and talk about old picks, but I will go back and actually play something for you that I said back in April or March, one of those two. I think it was March. And you'll hear exactly who I liked in the draft, make your boy not look so bad. It wasn't Brian Thomas Jr., but I'll explain that to you. I did like him also. We'll talk about that. But at the top of the show, we're going to talk about leading with the best. There's a way you can do that if you're Jacksonville. Your best player on offense, especially with Trevor Lawrence being out, I believe your best player is Brian Thomas Jr. I believe Brian Thomas Jr. might be your best player, maybe not your most important player, but he might be your best player even when Travis, or at least offensively, even when Trevor Lawrence is in the game. That's arguable, but in any event, we ain't going to get caught up in that because that'll take us off of the subject that we're really trying to focus on. What we're trying to focus on here is the Jaguars seem like they don't come out with the intent and with a very intentional effort of getting their best players the ball early in the game. I understand the first drive because sometimes you have to, I'm going to frame it like this. Sometimes you have to set things up. Sometimes you come out and the things that you're doing, maybe not the first thing you do. The first thing you do doesn't have to always be the game plan. Some things you do early to set up the game plan or to pick and poke and prod and look at certain formations and look how they have the eye in the sky. And the coaches in the booth are the eye in the sky and see how they respond to certain things that you're trying to do. But eventually in the second drive or the third drive, whatever you wanted to accomplish all week needs to be showing up, right? It needs to be like, okay, so what are we doing here? Detroit, the team that the Jaguars are playing in their last game against Houston, I think they saw something on tape where they said, okay, we can hit this in the passing game and this in the passing game, and then that'll open things up for the running game. What happened is in the passing game, they start throwing picks early. So with them being in a game against Houston where Houston didn't stretch the lead enough, they did get out in front of them a little bit. Eventually, even with the interceptions, Detroit was able to get back to their game plan. It's just that their defense had to play well enough for them to be allowed to get back into it. That's why coming out of halftime, Coach Dan Campbell said, we got to get some turnovers. Notice he didn't just say we need to play better offensively and stop turning the ball over. He talked about from that point forward, they had already had turnovers and they committed a couple of more after that, right? But from that point, the only way they're going to win is we have to get stops and we have to create turnovers. And that's exactly what they did, right? And it allowed the game plan to get back on track and get caught up because their defense played a little bit of bend but don't break. And I believe just like the biggest priority for a team, like whatever you think personnel-wise, the biggest priority is for the Jaguars in the offseason, that's not who they have to take first. You just got to make sure between the two periods of player procurement, you get exactly what you need. Everyone knew going into the offseason the Jaguars needed a center. Mitch Morse happened to come available. If he didn't, they probably would have gone in a different direction, either in the draft or later on in free agency. So it doesn't have to be the first thing you do just because it's a priority, because a lot of times it's not going to be the first thing that presents itself. The thing that I always say is I look at it like going to the grocery store. Before you get to the meat section, you're going to pass produce and you're going to pass a whole bunch of stuff, and the meat is all the way in the back, as it should be, right near the butcher, right near the back, right? If you're going in for meat, but you know you have to pick up a few items, don't just pass the items on the way to the meat. Just go ahead and grab them. And that's the way I think the Jaguars have lost fans, because it feels like they go into the game just like you would go into a store, and what they end up doing is you don't see Brian Thomas Jr. actually be targeted until late. They're not good enough to trust that all of these other things are going to protect them until they can get to the plan. I think what the Jaguars have to do is they have to lead with their best. Show me your best combination. Like the man said in the movie, The Five Heartbeats. Let me see what you got right now. And then he said, when he saw it, he said, it ain't about nothing. So now I see that's all you got. Let me show you what you need to be doing. Well, I think you need to come out and swing your best combination. No body punches, no jabs. You're going to have to come out and rock the Detroit Lions. And I think you got to hit them early with a heavy dose of Brian Thomas Jr. It's a chance for the Jaguars, who were neck and neck as an organization just 3 years ago with the Detroit Lions, to at least show some of the things that they wanted to do are better than the things, or at least as good as the things that the Lions wanted to do, but they just haven't had the fortune that the Lions have had. And that sounds all good, but the Jaguars, man, are 2-8, and the Lions are 8-1. I think they're 8-1. They might be 9-1. But that's the thing going into this game. It's like, at least put your best foot forward. At least show us something that you have been doing, at least from a talent perspective, that doesn't make you look and appear like you're that overmatched. Detroit's 8-1. And the thing about Detroit is they've scored 284 points and given up 171. The Jaguars have scored 202 and given up 264. So there's nothing that points to this game being a game where the Jacksonville Jaguars actually got a shot. There's nothing being pointed to that doesn't signal that this is going to be a flat out butt whooping and blowout. And maybe if the score is even close early, there's nothing to indicate that the Jaguars are going to be able to be competitive in the game going into the fourth quarter. But they do have some players. And if they have a shot, it's going to come because they depend on Brian Thomas Jr. They depend on Trayvon Walker. They depend on Josh Hines-Allen. They depend on Travis Etienne, who's banged up. I don't know if he's going to go. I don't know if Tank Bigsby is going to be totally healthy and whatever he brings. They just need to line up and not waste time. If you're going to win, you're going to have to win because you rock this guy early, or you rock this team early. I'm thinking about boxing analogies. You got to shock them, and you got to just nail them and kind of throw them off a little bit, and then you can mix and match and do some things. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. But that's the key to the game. We thought we'd, at least on Friday, give you a chance to watch the game from this perspective and hope and see how close they can get. All right, what we're going to do here in segment number 2 in the middle of the show, I'm going to talk about the draft. And I'm going to do something that Trent Baalke doesn't do. I'm going to go back. I'm actually play you a clip. Then I'm going to walk you through what I was thinking at this time and what I was thinking after the draft was over. Did they make mistakes? Probably. I actually said that Trent did a good job because he fulfilled some needs. It just hasn't worked and it hasn't turned out. And that's why we always question that team building thing. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. That's exactly what it is. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer, and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com. That's MINT mobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. And today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL. All right, moving along here on Locked On NFL, where's your team every day. Glad you could come along and make us your first listen as usual. Listen, when we had our media mock draft, I chose Quinyon Mitchell. No, I did not. I chose A.D. Mitchell. I had the wrong Mitchell. I chose Donna Mitchell, the wide receiver or Adnan Mitchell, however you said, from Texas, who ended up going to the Colts at the top of the second round. Now, here's why I did that. I did that because there were 2 players that went off the board prior to A.D. Mitchell. One of them was Brian Thomas Jr. He went right before. And I got a partner out there, my man Toriano will tell you, I have Brian Thomas Jr. ranked right behind Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and I had him ranked behind Marvin Harrison Jr. But I actually liked him better than I like Rome. But I was looking at the draft board saying Rome's going to be gone. And he was. He ended up going 9th. So I'm thinking in the second wave, there were 2 players that I wanted. But I actually chose somebody over BTJ. And BTJ was gone too. And so was this other player. And it turns out I would have been right either way. I am glad the Jaguars have Brian Thomas Jr. Now, this sounds a little funny, but I want y'all to listen to what I said back then for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I feel kind of good about this prediction. I go back, Trent doesn't. I want you to hear this. I get so many people saying, bro, what are the Jags going to do for the draft? I don't know, but I'll give you my best educated guess. I'm going to tell you the person, not the position, the person that I believe to the Jaguars, the person that they could target who will reasonably be there at 17. Now, you can argue that he won't, but for the sake of this, I'm not going to include Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not going to include, of course, I'm not including a quarterback. I'm not going to include Malik Neighbors. I'm not going to include Rome Odunze because I think they'll be gone, right? There's one person that if he's sitting there, he settles, that he's reasonably there, that he settles this positional value argument for me. That's Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. If Quinyon Mitchell is there, he is my pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just think that he's not Jalen Ramsey, because if he was, he'd be going at top 5. But what he is to me is he is a slightly more physical and maybe slightly more athletic version of A.J. Boye. Ooh, did you hear what I said? I will repeat. I am glad the Jacksonville Jaguars have Brian Thomas Jr. He was the other player I like. Now, the Jaguars did not end up choosing 17th. The Jaguars ended up choosing, I believe, 20th or 21st when they chose Brian Thomas Jr. So they moved back And they almost lost out on Brian Thomas Jr. because people that I know and I trust tell me that the Miami Dolphins, instead of choosing Chop Robinson, were that close. I mean, just a smidget away from adding more speed and size to their receiving core with Brian Thomas Jr. Miami loves fast guys, and they need fast guys who are also big. They did not do that, but the Jaguars took him. Now, there was talk that if the Jaguars did not take Brian Thomas Jr., there was a corner that they wanted. I believe that corner, based on information that I've been able to gather, was probably Terrion Arnold, the rookie for Detroit, who they're going to see this weekend. Another pretty good pick who's playing pretty well. I don't think Terrion Arnold is the player that Quinyon Mitchell is, and I said that then. Quinyon Mitchell showed up, and this is before the Senior Bowl evaluation. I saw Quinyon Mitchell when I started doing my heavy scouting, and I saw him late, usually around the last quarter of the season. Around like right now, I start really honing in on draft prospects, right? And now I'm doing it again. I thought if the Jaguars were in a certain place, I wouldn't have to be doing this. But no, I got to be doing it again. I got to go back and get into it because they're not going to make the playoffs. We're already looking ahead. So that's why I wanted to look back today and at least give myself a little bit of a pat on the back, because even though we wouldn't have ended up with BTJ. Y'all can't tell me we couldn't have used what the player I saw last night against Terry McLaurin and the player I saw last night against Washington. So it's good to be, even though I was wrong, it's good to be right, even if, I would have been right even if I'm wrong, because he is a very, very good player. I will say it again. I would not trade him for Brian Thomas Jr. I like the Brian Thomas Jr. pick. But what I alluded to in that clip was that there was a little bit of back and forth with positional value. The Jags even mentioned that Brian Thomas Jr. was the guy that they targeted. If he had been gone, I don't know if they said it, but they kind of hinted at the fact that they wouldn't have necessarily gone to their next receiver. They would have gone to the next player on their board. And I think that player was a corner, but it was not Quinyon Mitchell. It was Terrion Arnold. Remember when I said sometimes you can get lucky by mistake? I'm not telling you that Terrion Arnold would have been a mistake. I'm just telling you he's not better than Quinyon Mitchell, and Quinyon Mitchell probably would not have been the guy that the Jaguars chose. In fact, I'll go back and look at the first round. I'll tell you exactly how it went. For me, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you can't fix everything in one draft. And it's good for anyone to look back at a draft and say, okay, I almost did this. How would that have worked out? Like, I'll tell you one thing Trent will never do, because Trent wasn't here. But like Dave Caldwell would never look back at that draft in 2018 because he passed up Lamar Jackson, the dude that's probably about to win his third MVP. All right, so here it is right here. Here's what happened. The Jags were at 17. I think they moved back twice. Here's the guys that went. Dallas Turner, who's a real good player from Minnesota. He went. Jags didn't need him. Amarius Mims, there was some thought that they were going to do that, at least for me, and then move Anton Harrison over the left tackle. Did not happen. Amarius Mims is in Cincy. He's been all right if he can stay healthy. At 19, Jared Verse is one of the best pass rushers, not young pass rushers. He's one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League, but that would have been a little bit overkill because they already have Trayvon and they're paying somebody else in Josh Hines-Allen. Troy Fatanu went 20th to the Steelers. It's always good to invest in your line. He's been in and out of the lineup, though. He's had his little issues. Chop Robinson has been, for the most part, a disappointment in Miami. I think he got his first sack like a couple of weeks ago, and he's not a full-time player. At 22, that's where the Eagles took Quinyon Mitchell. And then at 23, the Jaguars took Brian Thomas Jr. And then at 24, the Detroit Lions took Terrion Arnold. The next wide receiver to go off the board was 28 when the Chiefs took Xavier Worthy. And then there were a few more, and it just kept going on and on. But in any event, everybody gets the point. The point that I'm making is I'm glad the Jags got who they got. If they'd have got who I thought they should have taken, that would have been fine too. If they'd have took Terrion Arnold, that would have been okay, but I don't think it would have had the impact that we have now. All right, this week's game, is it a backbreaker for Jacksonville? Is this going to be the one? Because after Sunday, they have a bye week. Is this going to be the one where Shad Khan makes a statement to the fans and to the Jaguars? We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Hillsdale College. If you want to get smarter, man, and you want to do it with some courses that are there for free, yeah, I said free, Hillsdale College is where it is. Time is our most precious commodity, man. So you don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content, especially on social media. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in high school? Probably not. Probably was like me, playing around and flirting. Even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Hillsdale College offers courses for free, more than 40 courses. That's right, online courses. It includes some of the things that I just mentioned. A brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism is also available. All of Hillsdale courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in whenever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to Hillsdale College, hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's Hillsdale, HILLSDALE.edu/locked-on to register. Hillsdale.edu/locked-on. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. Everybody's waiting for the levees to break. Everybody's waiting for the dam not to work, and the floodgates to open up as the Jaguars continue down an abysmal path at 2-8, and everyone expects it to be 2-9. That would mean that they would have a losing record. That would guarantee a losing record for the team for this season, and that would be a huge disappointment because the thought was that the Jaguars are going to make a move sort of like Detroit made last year. And this is their opponent this year, the Detroit Lions. Tale of two teams. In 2022, the Jags had the first pick. Detroit had the second pick. In 2024, Detroit is the favorite to go to the Super Bowl, and the Jaguars currently hold the number one pick in the 2025 draft. That is not where you want it to be as a franchise. That is not how you thought this was going to go. And because of that, and Shad Khan's declaration at the beginning of the season that this was the best, most talented Jaguars team in franchise history, and now the owner standing there with egg on his face with the team in the NFL that has, when you're number one in the draft, that means that even if you have the same record as someone else, it means that mathematically you're a worse team than they are. How do you go from being the best and most talented team in the history of a franchise that has had teams go to 3 AFC championships in their brief 30-year history? How do you go from being the best team that franchise has ever seen on paper to all of a sudden being the worst team in the National Football League? Well, there's a lot of things that put them in that way, and hopefully Shad Khan knows and can identify every single thing that causes that. Players not playing up to their contract, Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, and having to change defensive staffs after 2 years. All of those things have contributed, but so has the general manager, who sets the course for the entire team, who gives the chef all of the ingredients to cook. And Trent also, and Jamal Agnew, former player, he said this is not common or uncommon. When I posted Trent, somebody posted Trent at practice talking to players in between drills. Jamal Agnew said this happens all the time. With all due respect to Jamal Agnew, who would know more than me because he's at practice all the time and he's a functioning player, I got other players that told me it's weird and it's different. And I got the parents and the agents of other players that have told me repeatedly over the last 4 years that they can't stand it. So it's not me just making stuff up when I say that. And to be fair to Jamal Agnew, I don't know if he realized what he was responding to. I said it was weird that the GM was on the field talking to guys in between drills and in between conversations they're having with their coaches. I never said it was weird for a GM to be on the field with paper in his hand, walking around evaluating. I want to be clear. I want to be clear. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Baalke is always doing the most. He's always doing the most. They claim that he got people that know who talking about him on social media, and that he's got a burner account, somebody, Jag Dog or somebody. He's doing the most. And to me, it's just like, you got more important things to do than be worried about a podcaster. You got more important things to be worried about who's talking about you. You need to be fixing why people are talking about you. They just lead with the wrong things. Just like they don't lead with their best players, they also lead with things that they should not lead with and worry about things that they shouldn't be worried about. I mean, if they spent as much time being snappy with the opponent that Doug Peterson has a couple of times after games being snappy with media members, then maybe the team would be tougher. Don't take your stuff out on me if you get bullied and beat up, and then you're going to pick on a small person when you get off the bus and slap them around because you know they don't have any recourse. To me, that's what this feels like. And to me, those are losers. And they're not losers personally in their personal life, but in the vernacular, in the thing that we're talking about, NFL, football, gladiator stuff, they got a loser's mentality, and it has to change. And I think it starts from the top. Run everybody, especially if they get blown off. If they get blown out this Sunday. And people are lucky that this game's only going to be shown in North Florida and in Michigan, in the Michigan area, because Baltimore and Pittsburgh are playing, and the whole country's going to be looking at that game. Everybody won't see this butt whooping. And then if you happen to get lucky and win, ain't nobody going to see that either, except people in those two fan bases. But if what happens Sunday is something that I think is going to happen, if what I think is going to happen actually occurs, I think Shad needs to take a long look at go ahead and firing everybody and getting off to a good start, and go ahead and start your coaching search, start your GM search. You can start your GM search right now and get people in here, figure out what they're going to do with the staff, the back office staff, but let everybody know, hey, man, y'all going to finish coaching the rest of the year because we're paying you. But after this, you're gone. You're out. Everybody. It'll send a strong message that it will not be tolerated, and it's a message that needs to be sent. And it'll also let the fans and the ticket holders know that you don't take them for granted, that you're going to make sure that they spend the disposable coin on a team that is trying to do every single thing it can do to make sure that they put a better product on the field. Got a good product on Locked On NFL. That's right. 2 shows every day. Tyler the Madman rolling early in the morning, dropping a double shot of espresso and giving it to you with local experts like nobody else can. And then we slide through the barbershop in the middle of the day, and I'll give you another dose of Locked On NFL. A little different spin on it, a little barbershop talk, staying up in people's business. So make sure you tap into Locked On NFL twice a day, wherever you hear or watch your podcast. All right, good luck. We'll have a postcast here Sunday immediately after the game. I think I already know. I'll probably write it down right now unless the Jaguars give me a pre-Thanksgiving special and the Lions get caught looking ahead and the Jaguars are able to do something they haven't done, and that is put a real good game together with Mac Brown as the quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is out again this week, and we'll see what they can do. We'll talk about it within an hour, about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour after the game Sunday. We'll do a postcast here. And then, of course, we'll be on Doug Peterson watch and Press Taylor watch, and whoever else watch will be on that after the game ends. You guys have a great weekend. It's a beautiful, beautiful weather weekend here in North Florida. Please be careful, enjoy the game, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.